Hello and welcome to Southeastern Conference basketball predictions in the NCAA Tournament. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by Max Barr and Blake Lovell. Today, we go over fifth-seeded Michigan facing top seed Auburn in the Midwest Regional Sweet 16 round. 8:39 Central is the scheduled tip-off for this one, depending on other games and how long they go. You can catch this in the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, or you can get it on TV on CBS. Auburn about an 8.5-point favorite as we're doing this. Two teams that had great seasons. Auburn, nearly the number one team in the country for give or take 3 months. Just an awesome historic season for the Tigers. Meanwhile, Dusty May in Michigan, I think that team won 8 games a year ago. Quick rebuild by one of the better coaches in the country, as is Bruce Pearl at Auburn. Max Barr, start us off what you're looking for in Michigan and Auburn here.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I believe it's the largest spread of the Sweet 16, tied with Duke, Arizona, just before we reach a double-digit spread at 9.5. This game with the betting splits from VSiN, not much, but there is a little bit of a public side on Michigan. 62% of bets, 66% of the total money is on that Michigan 9.5. I think that's kind of to be expected. Auburn has not looked like the champs that they looked like a few months ago, just cruising through the SEC conference play. Stephen Pearl has come out and post-game press conferences and said not satisfied with the level of play. You've had players saying we're not satisfied with our level of play. And then you have Michigan, one of the hotter teams right now, kind of a tough team to prepare for with that double 7-footer combo. It's just something that no one else in the country has. And so I think rightfully so, you've got some public taking a little bit of a stab on Michigan plus that 9.5 there. Yeah, you have the betting splits.
The battle of the bigs. That's where we are, obviously. Everyone was talking about asking Bruce Pearl about the big guys for Michigan. Big Vlad, 7'1", Danny Wolf, 7 foot. And then Bruce Pearl's like, well, hang on a second. Like, we got some big guys too. Potential player of the year, Janai Broom at 6'10". You got Dylan Cardwell hulking up at 6'11". Chaney Johnson plays bigger, and I think it's just such a great matchup from that standpoint, just to see what it looks like in the paint, and just the way some of these guys can obviously step out and do some things too. And I think just from that perspective, like it's one of the better matchups, I think, in this round, just from a personnel standpoint, because you do have kind of that fun, just giants on both sides. And I think it's going to be interesting to see from whether that's defense, rebounding, blocking some shots, like just all that kind of stuff is going to come into play here when we talk about this front court matchup.
Yeah, if you've not seen Michigan play, it's highly unusual. You've got Danny Wolf, who's 7 feet even. He plays 67% of Michigan's minutes. Vlad Golden, 7'1", plays 68% of the minutes. They're both on the floor at the same time. I don't remember the last time I saw 2 7-footers play at the same time the way these guys do. But that's part of what makes Michigan go. Also, those guys are great at avoiding fouls, both under 3 fouls per 40 minutes. But guys, I think the thing where my attention turns in this game is the guard play. Michigan has trouble holding on to the ball. It doesn't force a lot of turnovers. Auburn is really good at not turning it over. And one thing that really stood out to me, I know that Auburn, relatively speaking, limped to the finish line compared to the season it had. But guys, down the stretch of that last game this weekend, I thought their guards, Jones and Pettiford, were so good. Pettiford is a McDonald's All-American athlete, just good at splitting double teams. And those guys made plays when it mattered. And I think that's one place where Michigan could have a really hard time stopping Auburn.
Yeah, I think there's a clear advantage there. This is the Trey Donaldson revenge game against his former squad. So you'll have a little storyline there. We're gonna, it's a 9.5 point favorite for Auburn. So there's going to be different advantages that they have. One disadvantage, one way that Michigan can pull off another March upset is the free throw line. That's what we have been on Auburn for. That's been Auburn's probably their biggest defensive weakness is the free throw line. That is Michigan's best offensive asset. They finished second in the Big Ten in conference free throw rate, where Auburn finished 14th in the SEC. Dylan Cardwell has done a decent job in March. Yeah, that opening game in March against Kentucky, he had 4 fouls, but since then, he has not had 4 fouls the rest of March. It's been 3 or fewer. So Cardwell has made an effort to stay on the floor and foul less. That's going to be a major storyline here with Cardwell staying on the floor, his switch ability, his defense that they can play on the perimeter against Wolf and Golden. Golden will catch it up on the top of the key outside the three-point line. He'll take one step and he'll be at the basket with those long strides. Freaky athletic is Vlad Golden. So Dylan Cardwell's ability to be on the court, he's got to stay out of foul trouble to be able to defensively give these 2 7-footers for Michigan trouble. If he's in foul trouble, could completely change the defensive dynamic for Auburn.
Well, and that leads me into the defensive element, because I think the story of this game is going to be Auburn defensively more so than anything else. I think it's going to be how they defend, because knowing, like we said, that they can force turnovers. I mean, Michigan, we've mentioned, almost 20% possessions this season, the turnover percentage, 324th nationally. If you look at conference play, yeah, I mean, they were 18th in the Big Ten, right? And so it's just like if you filter it just by conference only, they were 17th in three-point shooting. So immediately you're identifying 2 areas where it's like, all right, we know that we can have a major advantage in these 2 areas. We're not going to allow them to score 3 at a time. We're going to make them score 2 or 1 at a time. And we're also going to be able to take some of those possessions away from them just by virtue of us having some, handsy guards with what Denver Jones and all those guys can do, just the quickness we talk about with the Auburn guards and the, just the agility, just all the things that they bring to the table. And so I think that's, like you said, keeping the big guys on the court with Cardwell and those guys. Like, that is essential here, because I do think if we're looking up and let's say Auburn wins this game by whatever the spread is, 8, 10 plus points, we're probably going to say, yeah, Auburn scored some points, but I think the defense may be the thing that ultimately reigns supreme here. Because keep in mind, too, Michigan's going to get up and down the floor, even with the big guys, right? You mentioned a little bit, like they're going to get out and go. And so I think that's where those transition plays, where you get guys in a numbers disadvantage and all that, what do those usually lead to? They lead to some more fouls. And so for an Auburn team that we've said all season long does foul a bit, yeah, it can be a little tricky here if you just think about how the game could play out from just like a stylistic standpoint.
Any other storylines you guys are watching? For me, it's Auburn's temperament. They played with this edge that kind of worked for them all year. And then you had that boil over a couple times, particularly with Chad Baker and Mazzara. I watched them in their first round game. They won it going away against an overmatched opponent, but they looked just kind of lifeless at times. Just the state of between the ears is a general topic with Auburn that I'm looking for. Anything else that you guys have your eyes on here?
One thing I was going to bring up was how does Auburn game plan for Roddy Gale coming off the game of his life? Roddy Gale, if you guys aren't familiar, went through one of the most brutal three-pointer stretches in conference play this year. Just could not buy a basket from 3 pretty much for the entire month of February. I believe he did not make a 3 in February. Yeah. And then he gets 26 points, 4 of 6 from 3 against Texas A&M. Was not a career high, but still one of the best game this year for Roddy Gale. How does that continue? Does that guard, scoring? Is it Reuben Jones this time? Is it Namari Burnett this time? LJ Kaysen looks pretty good in minutes against A&M, because Denver Jones will probably be on Trey Donaldson. So I'm interested to see, how does Auburn game plan for those support guards, not named Trey Donaldson, because one of them being the offensive boost has been a big reason why Michigan has kind of gone on this little late March run after ending regular season 0-3.
Picks.
With that being said, I'm going to go Auburn here. I believe that there are some things that Michigan can do with the bigs and the free throws that can get Auburn into foul trouble. However, I think the matchup in the backcourt is just far too skewed to an advantage for Auburn, and guards win in March. So I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, one other storyline we didn't get to. I thought somebody mentioned it, but I'll take it now. I think Auburn's got a clear advantage for the reasons we mentioned. I do think the front court thing is interesting, but the back court tilts heavily to Auburn. That also includes Miles Kelly, who boy, this guy, when he gets going, can have a big shooting game. Now, Auburn can win without it, but he was 7 of 15 on threes against Alabama State in the tournament. And a few weeks ago, 9 of 14 on threes in that big win at Kentucky back on March 1st. That's a little extra layer of security for Auburn. I know that fan base is really nervous about this one, but I feel like on paper, it's a pretty good matchup, and I'll go with the Tigers.
The last time Auburn played at State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, do we remember what happened?
Was that the Ohio State game?
That was indeed the Ohio State game. Yeah, a game where they led by 44, I think, at one point. We're just playing absolute lights out, right? 13 of 30 from 3. Denver Jones was 4 of 5. Pettiford was 3 of 4. Miles Kelly 2 of 6. I mean, everybody got in on the action in that game. And I'm just like, hey, maybe that's Auburn's mojo. Big Ten team, State Farm Arena, sign me up for that $6,000 ticket price or whatever it is right now for the session. But I said earlier, I think one of the things that's interesting to look at, like I mentioned the Michigan turnover thing, right? Well, that was also one of the reasons we picked against them, I feel like, against Texas A&M, is that we were wondering, okay, can they really handle what A&M is going to bring to the table in terms of being able to turn you over, do those kind of things? Well, Michigan did a really good job at taking care of the ball in that game. They got on the offensive glass. Again, these two teams built a little different in terms of Auburn and A&M, especially from an offensive standpoint. So that allowed, Michigan to just kind of open things up. You mentioned Gale, a tremendous game, the breakthrough game that he's been looking for, and all those things that had to go together. I said in this tournament, because I don't think up until this round, we've all three made picks. We've kind of been staggering it, where, a couple people there, maybe there was some in the first round we may have done this on, but those were probably like, 25-point spreads or something like that. But I said I wasn't going to put the you-know-what on any SEC team, especially when we get to the important rounds. Both of you picked Auburn, so technically that means I should pick Michigan. But I'm going to pick Auburn here because I just think that it's one where I like the matchup. I do think there's something to, I know Chris was talking about the emotion, those kind of things. I thought Auburn showed us exactly what they needed to show us with the way they responded in the second half of that Creighton game. And I do think just getting that first weekend behind them, they had come into this tournament, as we said, everybody, man, they've lost 3 of 4. Nobody that's ever lost 3 of 4 has won the national championship, all this stuff. But I do wonder, how does just getting past that first weekend that had some adversity, for the number 1 overall seed, there was some adversity in the first weekend. They got past it. Now they've had a chance to reset. And Dusty May is a terrific coach. But I just think Auburn has been the better team. And I think from that standpoint, it's hard to pick against them in the spot.
Blake, tell folks about Bracket Bids on the way out, please.
Bracket Bids, the free pick'em contest you're enjoying, the auction draft league you guys are enjoying. But yes, we keep saying we appreciate all the support from Bracket Bids here over the past couple months on the channel. So do them a favor, support them as well. Download the Bracket Bids app or visit them at bracketbids.com.
All right. Hope you enjoyed our coverage of this one. We'll be wrapping it up afterwards. Best way to get it, hit the subscribe button. That is free. Enable your notifications if you want to know when we're coming out with content. For Max Barr, Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. Thanks for watching. God bless you. We'll see you again soon at Southeastern 16.